I was sitting in my living room on a Tuesday morning in February, watching the snow removal crew I'd hired finish clearing my driveway in Boulder, Colorado, when I saw her marching across the street with her phone pressed to her ear. The look on her face told me everything I needed to know. This was going to be one of those days. Her name was Brenda Thompson, president of the Meadowbrook Hills Homeowners Association, and she had made it her personal mission to make my life miserable since I moved into the neighborhood 6 months ago. She was the textbook definition of what people online called a Karen. Mid-50s, blonde highlights that looked like they cost more than my monthly grocery bill, and an expression that suggested she perpetually smelled something unpleasant. I watched through the window as she gestured wildly at the pile of snow my crew had deposited on the empty lot next to my property. The lot was just a flat piece of land, covered in white powder now, with a small gravel area where a few neighbors parked their cars when street parking got tight. Brenda's silver Mercedes was sitting there right now. Actually, my phone buzzed. It was Jake, my friend and attorney, with a text that said he was running late for our coffee meeting. I was about to respond when I heard the sirens. You have got to be kidding me. 2 police cruisers pulled up to my house, lights flashing. I set down my coffee mug and walked to the front door, pulling on my jacket. The cold air hit my face as I stepped outside, my boots crunching in the snow on my front steps. "Officers," I said, raising a hand in greeting. "What seems to be the problem?" A female officer, her nameplate reading Rodriguez, approached with a notepad. "Are you Warren Zimmerman?" "That's me. We received a call about illegal dumping of snow on private property." She glanced at Brenda, who stood behind her with arms crossed, looking triumphant. I almost laughed. "Illegal dumping? That lot is neighborhood property," Brenda interjected, her voice sharp. "The HOA has regulations about snow removal. You cannot just pile your snow wherever you want. It's in violation of Section 12, subsection 4 of our community guidelines." Officer Rodriguez held up a hand to quiet her. "Sir, did you have snow removed from your property and placed on that lot?" "I did," I said calmly, "because that lot belongs to me." The silence that followed was beautiful. Brenda's face went through several shades of red before settling on something close to purple. "That's not possible," she sputtered. "That lot is communal space. The HOA has always maintained it as neighborhood parking." I pulled out my phone and opened my documents folder. "Officers, I have the deed right here. I purchased that lot 3 months ago from the city when they auctioned off unused parcels. It's registered in my name with the county." Officer Rodriguez took my phone and examined the document. Her partner, Officer Chen, leaned over to look as well. After a moment, Rodriguez handed my phone back. "This appears legitimate," she said. "Do you have the property markers?" "I do. They were surveyed last month. I can show you if you'd like." Brenda was shaking now, whether from cold or anger I couldn't tell. "This is absurd. You can't just buy property without notifying the HOA." "Actually, I can," I said. "The lot wasn't part of the HOA jurisdiction. It was city-owned land that happened to be adjacent to this neighborhood. I made sure of that before I bought it." Officer Chen cleared his throat. "Madam, if this gentleman owns the property, he's within his rights to use it as he sees fit, including for snow storage." "But my car," Brenda said, her voice rising an octave. "I park there every day." I shrugged. "Without my permission, apparently." Officer Rodriguez closed her notepad. "Sir, we apologize for the inconvenience. Madam, calling 911 for civil property disputes is not appropriate. This is not an emergency." "But he's creating a hazard," Brenda insisted. "That snow pile is dangerous." "It's on my property," I repeated, "and it's snow in Colorado in February." The officers exchanged a look that suggested they were done with this conversation. Officer Rodriguez turned to Brenda. "Madam, I suggest you move your vehicle. You're parked on private property without permission." "I most certainly will not," Brenda said, lifting her chin. "Then you're trespassing," Officer Chen said flatly. "Mr. Zimmerman could have your vehicle towed." Now there was an idea I hadn't considered. I looked at Brenda, then at her Mercedes, then back at Brenda. "You know what, officers? I think I would like to have that vehicle towed. She's been parking there for months, apparently thinking she had some right to use my property." Brenda's eyes went wide. "You wouldn't dare." "I absolutely would. That lot cost me $45,000. You've been getting free parking on my dime." Officer Rodriguez pulled out her radio. "I'll call a tow truck." "Wait," Brenda said quickly. "Let's not be hasty. Perhaps we can discuss this like reasonable adults." "I tried to be reasonable," I said. "You called the police on me for putting snow on my own property. You've been harassing me since I moved in about everything from the color of my mailbox to the height of my grass. Last month you tried to fine me $300 because my trash cans were visible from the street for more than 12 hours after pickup." "Those are community standards," Brenda said, but her voice had lost its edge. "Your community standards don't apply to me anymore," I said. "I bought the lot specifically because of your harassment. I was tired of dealing with the HOA, so I checked with the city about any available parcels near my property. When I found out this lot was available and outside HOA jurisdiction, I jumped on it. The tow truck arrived 15 minutes later." Brenda spent that entire time alternating between threatening legal action and trying to negotiate. I stood firm. The driver, a guy named Rick who I'd actually gone to high school with, hooked up the Mercedes with practiced efficiency. "Where you want it taken?" Rick asked, grinning. He clearly found this situation entertaining. "The impound lot on Arapahoe," I said. "You can't do this," Brenda said, her voice cracking now. "This is theft." "Actually, it's the opposite of theft," Officer Chen said. "You're the one who parked on someone else's property without permission. That's technically trespassing." As Rick drove away with Brenda's car, she turned to me with pure venom in her eyes. "This isn't over, Warren. The HOA has lawyers. We'll fight this." "Fight what exactly?" I asked. "I own the lot. That's a fact. Your imaginary claim to it doesn't change the deed registered with Boulder County." After the police left and Brenda stormed off on foot, presumably to find a ride to the impound lot, I went back inside. My coffee had gone cold, but I was too energized to care. My phone rang almost immediately. It was Jake. "Hey man, sorry I'm late. Traffic was insane with all the snow," he said. "Don't worry about it. You won't believe what just happened." I filled him in on the morning's events while he drove over. By the time he arrived, I had fresh coffee brewing and was pulling up the security camera footage from my doorbell system. Jake was a real estate attorney, which was actually how I'd found out about the lot in the first place. He'd mentioned the city auction over beers one night and I'd seen an opportunity. Jake watched the footage of Brenda calling the police, shaking his head. "She actually called 911 over a snow pile. On my own property," I added. "This is gold, Warren. Pure gold." He leaned back on my couch, his coffee mug warming his hands. "So what's your plan now, honestly?" I hadn't thought much beyond getting that lot secured. I was just tired of the HOA constantly breathing down my neck. "You know she's going to retaliate, right?" HOA presidents like Brenda don't just roll over. Let her try. What can she do? The lot isn't under HOA jurisdiction. Jake's expression turned serious. "She can make your life difficult in other ways. Your house is still subject to the HOA rules. She could start enforcing every tiny violation, hitting you with fine after fine." She's already doing that. She could escalate. I've seen HOA boards get nasty when they feel challenged. They could put a lien on your house if fines go unpaid. I hadn't considered that angle. Can they really do that? If it's in the CC and Articus you signed when you bought the house? Yeah, they can. Jake pulled out his laptop. Let me look at your HOA documents. We spent the next hour going through the covenants, conditions, and restrictions that governed the Meadowbrook Hills neighborhood. It was worse than I remembered. The HOA had broad powers to levy fines, and those fines could indeed result in liens if they went unpaid for long enough. This is pretty standard, unfortunately, Jake said. But here's the thing, they have to follow their own procedures. They can't just arbitrarily fine you. There's a process. Notices, hearings, appeals. Brenda doesn't strike me as someone who cares much about process. Then that's where you fight back. If she steps outside the bounds of the HOA's own rules, you can challenge it. Jake closed his laptop. But Warren, be prepared for this to get ugly. HOA disputes can drag on for years. Maybe I should just sell and move somewhere without an HOA. In Boulder, good luck finding anything affordable. Plus, you just dropped 45 grand on that lot. You'd be walking away from a significant investment. He was right. I'd bought the lot not just to spite Brenda, but because it actually made financial sense. The property was adjacent to mine, increasing my overall land value. Plus, having control over that space meant I could prevent any future development that might impact my views or privacy. So what would you do? I asked. Jake thought for a moment. Document everything. Every interaction with Brenda, every HOA notice, every fine. Keep records of when you comply with legitimate requests. If she oversteps, you'll have evidence. And in the meantime, don't give her any ammunition. Follow the HOA rules to the letter for your actual house. Even the stupid ones, especially the stupid ones. Don't give her a legitimate reason to come after you. After Jake left, I spent the rest of the day organizing my documents. I created a folder on my computer specifically for HOA correspondence. I had emails going back 6 months, each one more petty than the last. Complaints about my trash cans, my mailbox, the color of my front door, the type of flowers in my garden, even the brand of Christmas lights I'd used in December. The next morning, I woke to find a letter taped to my front door. It was from the HOA, naturally. The letter, signed by Brenda in her capacity as president, informed me that I was being fined $500 for creating a public nuisance with excessive snow accumulation. I took a photo of the letter and texted it to Jake. His response came quickly. That's not a legitimate fine. The snow is on your property, not HOA property. Don't pay it. But the letters kept coming. Over the next week, I received 4 more notices. Each one cited a different violation, each one more creative than the last. According to Brenda, my doormat was the wrong color. My house numbers were too large. My exterior light fixtures needed to be updated to match neighborhood standards. And I had failed to submit proper documentation for the tree trimming I'd done in November. The fines totaled over $2,000. I called Jake. This is harassment, right? Absolutely. But here's what we're going to do. Respond to each notice in writing, documenting why the fine is invalid. Request a hearing before the HOA board for each one. Make them follow their own procedures. That sounds like a lot of work. It is, but it creates a paper trail, and it forces Brenda to either back down or defend these ridiculous fines in front of the other board members. I spent the weekend drafting responses. Jake helped me make sure the language was clear and cited the relevant sections of the HOA documents. For the snow pile fine, I pointed out that the snow was on my private property, not HOA common areas. For the doormat, I included photos showing that several other houses had similar doormats in various colors. For the house numbers, I cited the county's regulations, which my numbers complied with. For the light fixtures, I noted that the HOA's architectural standards didn't specify light fixture styles. And for the tree trimming, I attached the documentation I'd actually submitted back in November, with a receipt showing the date it was sent. Monday morning, I hand-delivered my responses to Brenda's house. She lived 4 streets over in a large colonial with perfect landscaping and a 3-car garage. I rang the doorbell and waited. She opened the door in a silk bathrobe, clearly not expecting visitors at 8 in the morning. "Warren," she said, her voice icy. "Good morning, Brenda. I have responses to the violation notices." I held out the folder. She didn't take it. "You can mail those to the HOA office." "The HOA office is your dining room table," I said. "I'd rather hand-deliver them to ensure they're received. I also want to formally request hearings for each violation, as is my right under the HOA bylaws." "Fine." She snatched the folder from my hands. "The board meets the first Tuesday of every month. You'll be notified." "Great, I look forward to it." I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Brenda." I checked with the city. Turns out there are 3 other parcels near the neighborhood that aren't under HOA jurisdiction. I'm thinking of putting in offers on those too. Her face went pale. "You wouldn't. Try me." I walked back to my car, feeling her glare burning into my back. The truth was, I hadn't actually checked on other parcels, but the look on her face made the bluff worth it. The board meeting was scheduled for the first Tuesday in March. In the meantime, life in the neighborhood got weird. Some of my neighbors started avoiding eye contact. Others would wave sympathetically, as if they wanted to show support but were afraid of becoming Brenda's next target. One neighbor, an older man named Harold who lived 2 houses down, stopped me while I was checking my mail. "Warren, I just want you to know, not everyone agrees with what Brenda's doing," he said quietly, glancing around as if she might be listening. "I appreciate that, Harold. She's gotten worse over the years. When we first moved in, the HOA was reasonable. Basic stuff, keeping the neighborhood looking nice. But after she became president 5 years ago, it's been one power trip after another." He shook his head. "My wife and I got fined last year because our garage door was open too long. We were unloading groceries. That's insane." "Tell me about it. But most people just pay the fines and move on. It's easier than fighting her." "Maybe someone should fight her." Harold smiled sadly. "That's what we all think. But then we remember she has lawyers and time and an apparent vendetta against anyone who challenges her. Most of us just want to live our lives in peace." I understood that perspective, but it didn't sit right with me. Bullies thrived when people didn't stand up to them. The board meeting took place in the community center, a small building at the entrance to the neighborhood. I arrived 15 minutes early and found about a dozen other residents already there. The room was set up with a long table at the front for the board members and rows of chairs for everyone else. Brenda sat in the center of the table, flanked by 4 other board members. I recognized 2 of them. Margaret Peterson, the vice president, was a retired teacher in her 60s. Daniel Murray, the treasurer, owned a local accounting firm. The other 2, the secretary and member-at-large, I'd seen around but never spoken to. "This meeting will come to order," Brenda announced at exactly 7 o'clock. She ran through standard business first. Minutes from the last meeting, financial reports, upcoming neighborhood events. Then she got to what she was clearly waiting for. "Next on the agenda, we have violation hearings for Warren Zimmerman." She said my name like it tasted bad. "Mr. Zimmerman has requested to dispute several fines levied against him for violations of community standards." I stood up. "That's correct. I'd like to address each fine individually. Very well. Let's start with the snow accumulation fine. I pulled out my folder. The fine alleges I created a public nuisance with excessive snow accumulation. However, the snow in question is located entirely on property I own that is not subject to HOA jurisdiction. I've brought a copy of the deed showing my ownership of the lot adjacent to my residence. I walked up and handed copies to each board member. Brenda barely glanced at hers. The lot may be yours, but the visual impact affects the neighborhood, she said. Visual impact isn't mentioned in the HOA covenants as grounds for fines, I replied. And even if it were, the snow will melt in a few weeks. It's a temporary condition resulting from normal winter weather in Colorado. Margaret leaned forward. Brenda, I have to agree with Mr. Zimmerman. If the snow is on his property and it's not creating a hazard, I don't see grounds for a fine. It's an eyesore, Brenda insisted. So is your opinion, I muttered, then immediately regretted it. Professional, Warren. Stay professional. Daniel cleared his throat. I think we should vote on whether this fine is valid. All in favor of upholding the fine. Brenda raised her hand. One other board member, a woman whose name I didn't catch, also raised hers. All opposed. Margaret, Daniel, and the secretary raised their hands. The fine is overturned, Daniel announced. Next violation. We went through each one. The doormat fine was overturned 4-1. The house numbers fine was overturned unanimously after I showed photos of 3 other houses with similar sizes. The light fixture fine sparked a longer debate, but ultimately was overturned 3-2. The tree trimming fine was dismissed when I produced my documentation showing I'd submitted the required forms. By the end, Brenda looked ready to explode. She'd lost every single dispute. Is there any other business? Daniel asked. Yes, I said, standing again. I'd like to file a formal complaint against Brenda Thompson for harassment. The room went silent. Even the other residents who'd been whispering among themselves during the hearing stopped talking. That's absurd, Brenda said. Is it? In the past month, you've issued over $2,000 in fines against me, all of which have now been overturned. You called the police on me for putting snow on my own property. You've sent me harassing emails and letters. I believe this constitutes a pattern of behavior intended to intimidate and punish me for asserting my property rights. Margaret looked uncomfortable. Warren, that's a serious accusation. I have documentation of every interaction. Emails, letters, even security camera footage. I'm happy to provide all of it to the board. Daniel exchanged glances with Margaret. We should discuss this in executive session. I want this on the record, I said. If the board doesn't address this behavior, I'll have no choice but to pursue legal action. Are you threatening us? Brenda demanded. I'm informing you of my intentions. There's a difference. The board agreed to review my complaint and provide a response within 30 days. I left the meeting feeling vindicated but exhausted. Standing up to Brenda was emotionally draining. Jake was waiting in my driveway when I got home. How'd it go? All fines overturned. I also filed a harassment complaint against Brenda. He let out a low whistle. You're really going for it, aren't you? She's not going to stop unless someone makes her stop. We went inside and I poured us both a drink. Jake pulled out his laptop and started taking notes as I recounted the meeting in detail. The fact that the other board members voted against her is huge, he said. It means she doesn't have complete control. That gives us leverage. Us? Yeah, us. This has gone beyond a simple property dispute. If Brenda retaliates for your complaint, and I think she will, you're going to need representation. I want to take this case. Jake, I can't afford to pay you for what this could turn into. Then we'll work out a payment plan. Or I'll do it pro bono. Warren, Cases like this are exactly why I went to law school. HOAs need to be held accountable when they abuse their power. I felt a wave of relief. Having Jake officially on my side changed everything. Over the next 2 weeks, things escalated in ways I didn't expect. Brenda started a phone tree, calling residents and telling them I was planning to develop the lot I'd purchased into a commercial property. It was complete fiction, but it worked. I started getting dirty looks from neighbors who'd previously been neutral. Someone egged my car. My trash cans were knocked over 3 times. Harold stopped by one evening to apologize. I know it wasn't right, but Brenda convinced a lot of people that you're trying to bring in businesses that will ruin property values. Harold, I have no plans to develop that lot. It's just empty land for now. I believe you, but Brenda's persuasive. She's telling everyone you're planning a mini mall or a gas station. That's slander. Probably, but it's effective. Jake sent a cease and desist letter to Brenda, demanding she stop spreading false information about my plans for the property. She responded with a letter from the HOA's attorney, claiming her statements were protected speech and that I was the one harassing her by filing a frivolous complaint. This is going to get worse before it gets better, Jake warned. Are you sure you want to keep fighting? What's the alternative? Let her win. You could sell the house and the lot, move somewhere else. And what message does that send? That if you harass someone enough, they'll give up. Jake smiled. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to request all HOA records for the past 5 years. Financial documents, board meeting minutes, correspondence. If Brenda's been abusing her power with you, chances are she's done it to others. We build a pattern. Can we do that? You're a member of the HOA. You have a right to inspect the records. It's in the bylaws. We sent a formal request the next day. Brenda tried to stonewall us, claiming the records were being audited and weren't available. Jake sent another letter pointing out that the bylaws required records to be available within 10 business days of a request. He also noted that failure to comply could be grounds for removing board members. That got her attention. The records were delivered a week later, 3 large boxes of documents. Jake and I spent an entire weekend going through everything. What we found was damning. Over the past 5 years, Brenda had levied over $100,000 in fines against residents. Some were legitimate, but many were questionable or outright bogus, just like the ones she tried to hit me with. Even more concerning, the financial records showed irregularities. Money from the HOA's reserve fund had been moved around in ways that didn't quite add up. This looks like embezzlement, Jake said, highlighting a series of transactions. These withdrawals are all marked as administrative expenses, but there's no documentation of what they were actually for. How much are we talking? At least $30,000 over 3 years. Could be more if we dig deeper. This changed everything. We weren't just dealing with an overzealous HOA president anymore. We were potentially looking at criminal activity. Jake made copies of the relevant documents, and we scheduled a meeting with the other board members, excluding Brenda. Margaret agreed to host at her house. When we laid out what we'd found, the reaction was exactly what I'd hoped for. Shock, followed by anger. I had no idea, Margaret said, her hands shaking as she looked at the financial records. I trusted Brenda to handle the money properly. That's why we have a treasurer, Daniel said, looking at the papers. These transactions should have come through me for approval. Did they? Jake asked. Some of them, yes. But these ones here, marked as administrative expenses, I don't remember signing off on those. Jake pulled out another document. Your signature is on the authorization forms, but look at the dates. These are all from times when, according to the meeting minutes, you were out of town. Daniel's face went red. She forged my signature. We can't be certain without a handwriting expert, but it's suspicious, Jake said. Margaret stood up, pacing her living room. We have to report this. If Brenda's been stealing from the HOA, that's a crime. It is, Jake agreed, but we need to be careful about how we proceed. Accusing someone of embezzlement is serious. We should have a full audit done first. I'll hire an independent auditor, Daniel said. I know someone who specializes in this kind of work. If there's fraud, they'll find it. The next board meeting was tense. Brenda had clearly sensed something was wrong. She kept asking why an audit was necessary, claiming it was a waste of HOA funds. It's standard practice, Daniel said calmly. We should be doing annual audits anyway. The bylaws actually require it. Our finances are fine, Brenda insisted. Then an audit will confirm that, Margaret said. Unless you have a reason to object, Brenda's face flushed. I object to the implication that I've done something wrong. No one's implying anything, Daniel said, though his tone suggested otherwise. This is about transparency and accountability. The vote to authorize the audit passed 4-1, with only Brenda voting against it. The auditor, a woman named Catherine Lewis, spent 3 weeks combing through the HOA's financial records. Her report, delivered in mid-April, confirmed what Jake and I had suspected. Over $38,000 had been misappropriated from the HOA's accounts over a 3-year period. The money had been transferred to an account that belonged to a company called Meadowbrook Management Services, which the auditor discovered was owned by Brenda's husband. This is textbook embezzlement, Catherine explained at an emergency board meeting. The company, Meadowbrook Management Services, doesn't appear to provide any actual services. It's essentially a shell company used to funnel HOA money into the Thompsons' personal accounts. Margaret looked devastated. I can't believe this. Brenda, how could you? Brenda, for once, didn't have a quick retort. She sat at the table, her face pale, her hands gripping the armrests of her chair. I want my attorney present before I say anything, she finally managed. That's probably wise, Jake said, because the board is going to be filing a police report. You can't do that, Brenda said, her voice rising. This is an internal matter. Theft of $38,000 is not an internal matter, Daniel said. It's a felony. The police were called. Detective Sarah Martinez arrived with a partner, and they spent 2 hours at the community center, reviewing the audit report and taking statements from the board members. Brenda refused to speak without her lawyer, which was her right, but her silence spoke volumes. We'll need to conduct our own investigation, Detective Martinez said, but based on what I'm seeing here, there's probable cause for charges. We'll be in touch. Brenda was asked to resign from the board immediately. She refused. The board held an emergency vote and removed her anyway, citing the bylaws that allowed removal of board members for misconduct. She left the meeting in tears, threatening lawsuits against everyone. The neighborhood erupted in chaos. Word spread quickly about the embezzlement allegations. Some residents defended Brenda, claiming it was all a misunderstanding or a vendetta by me and the board. Others were furious, demanding their money back. There were calls for a special election to replace the entire board, accusations flying in every direction. I tried to stay out of the drama as much as possible, but it was impossible. People wanted to know what I knew, what my role was in uncovering the fraud, whether I had any agenda beyond exposing Brenda. I just wanted her to stop harassing me, I told one neighbor who cornered me at the grocery store. The embezzlement thing, that was just something we discovered while reviewing the records. But the truth was, I felt responsible in a way. If I hadn't pushed back against Brenda's fines, if I hadn't insisted on reviewing the HOA records, the embezzlement might have continued indefinitely. How much more would she have stolen? The police investigation took 2 months. During that time, Brenda and her husband hired a high-profile criminal defense attorney. There were rumors they were trying to pay back the money, but the district attorney's office wasn't interested in deals. This was a clear-cut case of theft, and they wanted to prosecute. In June, Brenda Thompson was formally charged with embezzlement, forgery, and theft. Her husband was charged as an accomplice. Their trial was scheduled for September. The HOA, meanwhile, was in turmoil. Margaret took over as interim president and immediately began implementing reforms. New financial controls, mandatory audits, limits on board member authority. The changes should have been in place all along, but Brenda had systematically dismantled safeguards over her tenure as president. Jake helped draft new bylaws that would prevent future abuses. We included provisions for recall elections, term limits for board members, and strict oversight of HOA funds. The changes were put to a vote of all residents in July and passed overwhelmingly. I was asked to join the board. I declined. I'd had enough of HOA politics to last a lifetime. The trial in September was anticlimactic. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Brenda's attorney negotiated a plea deal. Brenda pled guilty to embezzlement and forgery. Her husband pled guilty to being an accessory. Brenda was sentenced to 3 years in prison, though the judge indicated she'd likely serve 18 months with good behavior. Her husband got probation and community service. They were also ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA, plus fines and court costs. On the day of sentencing, I sat in the courtroom and watched Brenda stand before the judge. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. When given the chance to speak, she offered a tearful apology, claiming financial stress had driven her to make terrible choices. The judge wasn't swayed. "You held a position of trust in your community," the judge said. "You violated that trust repeatedly and systematically. Your actions went far beyond mere financial crimes. You used your position to harass and intimidate residents who questioned your authority. You abused the legal system by making false reports. This court takes such behavior seriously." As Brenda was led away, I felt no satisfaction, just sadness that it had come to this. She'd had every opportunity to simply do her job properly, to serve the community instead of herself. She'd chosen a different path. The HOA used the restitution money to fund neighborhood improvements. A new playground was built at the community center. The common areas were upgraded with better lighting and landscaping. There was even enough left over to lower everyone's HOA fees for a year. As for the lot I'd purchased, I still own it. I never did put in those offers on other parcels, though I let Brenda think I would for a while. The lot just sits there, a nice buffer between my house and the street. Sometimes neighbors ask if they can park there. I usually say yes, because despite everything, I'm not interested in being petty. Harold stopped by one afternoon in October, about a year after the whole thing started. We stood in my driveway, looking at the lot where Brenda's Mercedes used to park. "You ever regret it?" Harold asked. "Fighting her, I mean. All the stress and hassle," I thought about it. The months of harassment, the legal bills, the constant drama. But I also thought about the other residents who'd been victimized by Brenda's schemes, the money that had been recovered, the reforms that were now in place. "No," I said, "I don't regret it. The neighborhood's better without her in charge," Harold said. "People are actually enjoying living here again. We had a block party last month, first one in 5 years. I heard about that. Sorry I missed it. Next time." Harold patted my shoulder. "You know, at first I thought you were crazy for taking her on, but you did what the rest of us were too scared to do. You stood up to a bully." After Harold left, I walked over to the lot. The snow had long since melted, replaced by spring grass and then summer weeds and now the brown vegetation of fall. I'd been thinking about what to do with the space. Maybe a garden, or just leave it natural. I had options now, which was the point. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Jake. "Drinks tonight, I'm buying." "What's the occasion?" I replied. "Do I need an occasion to buy my friend a drink? You never buy, this is suspicious." "Fine, I got promoted, made partner, happy now," I smiled. "Drinks at 7. Congratulations, partner." That evening, sitting at our usual bar on Pearl Street, Jake raised his glass. To standing up to HOA Karens. To having good friends who happen to be lawyers, I countered. We clinked glasses. The beer was cold, the company was good, and for the first time in over a year I felt like I could finally relax. "So what's next for you?" Jake asked. "Thinking of getting involved in any more HOA wars?" "God, no. I've had my fill. I just want to live quietly and not deal with any more drama." "That's what you said before you bought that lot, true. But I mean it this time." "Sure you do," Jake grinned. "You know, Margaret mentioned the board needs new members. Elections are coming up." "Absolutely not. They specifically asked if you'd consider running." I said no when they asked me before. That was right after the trial. Things have settled down now. The HOA actually functions properly. It could use someone like you, someone who's not afraid to call out problems. I shook my head. "I appreciate the vote of confidence, but I'm not board material. I just wanted Brenda to stop harassing me." "And in the process, you reformed an entire HOA, recovered almost $40,000, and sent a criminal to prison. Not bad for someone who just wanted to be left alone." When I got home that night, I found a letter in my mailbox. It was from the HOA, but unlike the hostile notices from Brenda's era, this one was friendly. Margaret had written to formally invite me to consider running for the board in the upcoming election. "The neighborhood needs people who care about doing the right thing," she wrote. "You proved you're that kind of person. Please think about it." I set the letter on my kitchen counter and made a cup of tea. Through my window, I could see the lot, illuminated by streetlights. That empty piece of land had been the catalyst for everything that followed. It had cost me $45,000, months of stress, and probably a few years off my life expectancy. But it had also revealed the truth about Brenda, protected other residents from future theft, and improved the neighborhood. Maybe Jake and Margaret were right. Maybe I should get more involved. Not because I wanted power or control, but because communities needed people willing to stand up when something was wrong. Or maybe I should just enjoy my quiet life and let someone else take on the responsibility. I didn't have to decide tonight. The election wasn't for another month. I had time to think about it. My doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I opened it to find a woman I didn't recognize, maybe in her early 30s, holding a plate of cookies. "Hi," she said. "I'm Allison Jenkins. I just moved in 3 houses down. I wanted to introduce myself and say thank you." "Thank you for what?" "For what you did with Brenda Thompson. My sister used to live in this neighborhood. She moved out 2 years ago because Brenda made her life miserable. Constant fines, harassment, the whole thing. When I heard Brenda was gone and the HOA was actually functional now, I decided to buy a house here. So, thank you." I took the plate of cookies, feeling oddly touched. "That's really nice of you to say. Welcome to the neighborhood. These are homemade chocolate chip, my grandmother's recipe." Allison smiled. "I hope we can be friends. It seems like this is a good place to live now." After she left, I sat down with the cookies and my tea. Maybe that was the real measure of whether fighting Brenda had been worth it. Not the restitution money or the criminal conviction, but the fact that people like Allison felt safe moving into the neighborhood again. The next morning, I called Margaret. "I'll do it," I said. "I'll run for the board." "Warren, that's wonderful. We're so glad to hear it. But I have conditions. I'm not interested in being president. I'll serve as a regular member, help make decisions, but I don't want to be in charge." "That's perfectly fine. We just need good people willing to serve." The election took place in November. There were 3 open positions and 7 candidates. I came in second, which meant I was on the board whether I liked it or not. My first meeting was in December, and it was refreshingly boring. We discussed budget allocations for snow removal, approved a request from a resident to install a fence, and reviewed proposals for updating the community center. No drama, no accusations, no police, just normal HOA business. During the meeting, Daniel mentioned that one of the parcels near the neighborhood had sold. "Someone bought the lot on Spruce Avenue," he said. "The one that used to be city-owned." I perked up. "Really? Who bought it?" "Not sure. The deed just says an LLC, Spruce Holdings or something like that." After the meeting, I looked up the property records online. The buyer was indeed Spruce Holdings LLC. A little more digging revealed that the LLC was registered to none other than Harold and his wife. I called him the next day. "Harold, you sneaky devil, you bought that lot on Spruce." He chuckled. "Guilty. After watching what you did with your lot, I figured it might be smart to grab some extra land while it was available. Plus, it's right behind my house. I can make sure no one builds anything that blocks my view." "That's brilliant. Welcome to the club of people who own land outside HOA jurisdiction." "It's a good club to be in," Harold agreed. "By the way, congrats on winning the board election." "Thanks. It should be interesting. Just don't let it consume your life like it did with Brenda." "The HOA should serve the neighborhood, not the other way around." "Words to live by," I said. As December turned into January, I settled into my role on the board. It was more work than I'd expected, but also more rewarding. We were actually helping people, solving problems, improving the community. It was what an HOA was supposed to be. One afternoon, I was shoveling snow from my driveway when a car pulled up. It was a newer model sedan, and the woman who got out looked vaguely familiar. "Warren Zimmerman?" she asked. "That's me. I'm Jennifer Walsh, reporter for the Boulder Daily Camera. I'm doing a story about HOA reform in Colorado, and your situation with Brenda Thompson came up multiple times in my research. Would you be willing to talk to me?" I leaned on my shovel, considering. "What kind of story?" "A piece about how residents can protect themselves from HOA abuse." "Your case is a perfect example of someone who stood up to an overreaching board and actually won. I think it could help other people in similar situations." We talked for over an hour. I told her everything, from the snow pile that started it all to the embezzlement charges to the reforms we'd implemented. She took careful notes and asked thoughtful questions. "This is going to be a great story," she said as she packed up her recorder. "Do you mind if I take a photo of you with the lot in the background? The irony of it all starting with a snow pile is just perfect." The article ran 2 weeks later, spanning 3 pages in the Sunday edition. It was fair and thorough, detailing not just my experience but also interviews with other residents, Margaret, and even comments from Brenda's attorney. The headline read, "How One Boulder Homeowner's Fight Against HOA Overreach Uncovered Embezzlement and Sparked Reform." The response was immediate. I got calls from residents in other HOA communities, asking for advice on dealing with their own problematic boards. A state legislator reached out, saying she wanted to use our story as a basis for new legislation governing HOAs in Colorado. Jake was swamped with requests from people wanting representation in HOA disputes. "You've started a movement," Jake said, showing me his phone full of messages. "I just wanted to put snow on my own property," I said. That's how most movements start. Someone decides they've had enough. Looking back now, almost 2 years after that morning when Brenda called 911 over my snow pile, I'm amazed at how much changed because I refused to back down. The neighborhood is genuinely better. The HOA functions properly. People feel safe in their homes again. And Brenda, well, she got out of prison after serving 14 months and moved to Arizona with her husband. I heard they're rebuilding their lives, which is good. Everyone deserves a second chance. As for the lot, I ended up planting a community garden there. Harold helped design it, and we got about a dozen neighbors involved. Now, during the summer, the space that used to be a source of conflict produces tomatoes, peppers, herbs, and friendship. Kids from the neighborhood come by to water the plants and learn about growing food. It's become a gathering place, which was never my intention but turned out to be the best possible use for the land. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I stand at my window and look at that lot. I think about Brenda's Mercedes parked there, about the snow pile that started everything, about all the drama and stress and eventual triumph. It's a reminder that standing up for what's right isn't always easy or convenient, but it's always worth it. The HOA sends out a newsletter every month now. It includes updates on neighborhood activities, reminders about community standards, and a section called Know Your Rights that explains what the HOA can and cannot do. It's the kind of transparency we should have had all along. I was re-elected to the board last year without opposition. I still don't want to be president, but I'm happy to serve. We've continued implementing reforms, always asking ourselves whether a rule truly serves the community or just creates bureaucracy for its own sake. More often than not, we've been eliminating rules rather than adding them. The neighborhood held another block party in September, and this time I went. It was good to see everyone relaxed and actually enjoying each other's company. There was a moment when someone proposed a toast to Warren for saving the neighborhood, which made me deeply uncomfortable. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who got tired of being pushed around and had the resources and support to push back. But I accepted the toast graciously, because I understood what they really meant. They were celebrating not me, but the idea that individuals can make a difference when they stand up to injustice. That communities work best when people get involved and hold their leaders accountable. That bullies, no matter how powerful they seem, can be stopped. Harold, several beers in, pulled me aside at that party. "You ever regret buying that lot?" he asked. "You asked me that before." Yeah, but that was before all the committee meetings and board duties and phone calls from strangers wanting advice. Now that you know what it actually cost you, do you regret it? I looked around at the party, at neighbors laughing and kids playing and the general atmosphere of community that had been missing for so long. Not even a little bit, I said, and I meant it, because sometimes the right choice isn't the easy choice. Sometimes standing up for yourself means standing up for everyone. And sometimes a snow pile is just a snow pile, but sometimes it's the beginning of something much bigger. The garden on the lot is flourishing now. We harvested pounds of vegetables last summer and donated most of it to a local food bank. This year we're planning to expand, maybe add some fruit trees along the perimeter. Harold suggested raised beds for elderly residents who have trouble bending down. Allison wants to start a composting program. It's amazing what can grow when you plant the right seeds, literally and figuratively. As I finish writing this account of everything that happened, sitting in my living room with a cup of coffee and a view of that lot through my window, I'm struck by how ordinary it all seems now. The drama has faded. The wounds have healed. Life has returned to normal, or rather to a new and better normal, but I haven't forgotten the lessons I learned. That property rights matter, that HOAs need oversight, that one person really can make a difference. And that sometimes the best investment you can make isn't financial but moral, choosing to do what's right even when it's difficult. The lot cost me $45,000, but it's worth so much more than that now. Not in terms of property value, though that's increased too, but in terms of what it represents. It's a symbol of resistance to tyranny, even the small-scale tyranny of an overzealous HOA president. It's proof that ordinary people can fight back against abuse of power and win. And every winter when it snows, I make sure to pile all my snow right there on that lot. It's become a tradition now, a reminder of how all this started. Some of the neighbors have started doing the same thing, adding their snow to mine in a collective middle finger to the memory of Brenda's overreach. The snow pile has become legendary in the neighborhood. New residents hear the story and can't quite believe it. Old residents smile and nod, remembering the chaos and the eventual triumph. And me. I just keep living my life, serving on the board when needed, tending the garden in summer and piling snow in winter. It's a good life, made better by the knowledge that when I was tested, when I could have just paid the fines and moved on, I chose to stand my ground. That lot, that simple piece of land, changed everything. It exposed corruption, reformed a broken system, and brought a community together. Not bad for $45,000 and one stubborn homeowner who refused to be pushed around. So if you're out there, dealing with your own HOA nightmare, wondering if it's worth fighting back, let me tell you, it is. It won't be easy. It'll cost you time and money and peace of mind. But in the end, standing up for yourself and your community is always worth it, and who knows? Maybe your snow pile will change the world too, or at least your little corner of it, and sometimes that's enough.